back, everybody. It's another episode of Sound Family Dwelling. I'm your co-host, Chris Angel, and I'm here with your host, Mark Jacobson. Hello, Mark.
Hello, Chris. Hi, everybody.
Good to see you. Good to see you. It is.
You too.
So I feel like this is kind of a continuation of our title and escrow conversation because we're talking about escrow today, which is often coupled with title.
Yeah, that's right. Last time we talked about title and some of the frequently asked questions we get about title, or really what the title companies get as well. And so the next part then is naturally to talk about escrow and what's escrow, because it's very closely related to title.
Yeah, it's so funny. This is great that you're covering all these things because I think people don't understand what happens in the background of transactions. There's lots of talk about is technology going to take over and all this stuff, but there's so many moving parts that I don't ever see that fully happening. I see there are places where technology can definitely step in, but there's just parts like title and escrow that really require people to manage the details of it all.
Yeah, I don't know how you can really get around that. So
walk me through it. I know you've prepared some frequently asked questions on escrow.
Right. These are just things that I see people wondering a lot, and some escrow people I know have shared with me some of the things that, some of the questions they get as well. So let's just get into it. First off, what does escrow do in a real estate transaction, in a real estate sale? So escrow is a neutral and disinterested third party where all the parties in the real estate where all parties to a real estate transaction submit documents, deposit funds such as earnest money, or other things of value, which are held in trust until the time a specific action is to be performed. So these actions could be anything from earnest money disbursements. What that means is sometimes in a transaction, especially if it's a longer transaction, the earnest money is deposited to escrow, and there might be an instruction that that earnest money goes to the seller before the transaction is closed. Usually that's something that's an incentive for the seller to go into contract, especially for a long closing. Anyway, that's just one example. Lien payoff requests, utilities payoffs, or any type of other lien or other things, and ultimately the transfer of interest or ownership of the property and closing the sale. Now, these actions only happen according to specific written instructions that are mutually agreed upon by all applicable parties to the transaction. So, the closing date, for example, when it's supposed to close, that's mutually agreed upon. The price.
Those instructions are captured in the contract, right?
Those are all in the contract. In
other words, the contract is the instructions that they're following.
The contract is the instructions for the buyer and the seller, and in large part the real estate brokers. However, there could be other instructions that come from the lender.
Good point.
Or title company, or perhaps an attorney if there's an attorney involved in the transaction or something.
Good point. Really good.
Essentially, escrow is a clearinghouse for all of these actions needed to transfer or finance the real estate.
Got it.
Okay.
Cool. Perfect.
So now we touched on it a little bit, but who are all the parties referred to in that question? Well, obviously the buyer, the seller, all lien holders on title. Those are mostly mortgage companies, but they could also be tax liens, contractor liens. You had some work done on your home and weren't able to pay it in full. If that's not able to be resolved, eventually the contractor can, usually based on the contract that you signed with them, they can put a lien on your home for the remainder of what's owed to them. Utilities liens, those would be, again, unpaid utilities, or any other lien placed on the property through proper and legal means, such as perhaps you got a personal loan from a friend or family member, and you agreed that they would be secured by the equity in your property. So you drafted a document and had it recorded on title.
Mm-hmm.
So a new lender, if applicable. Most people buy a property using a loan from a bank or a mortgage company. So a new lender could be a party in the transaction. The title company, the real estate brokers, such as myself, other professionals employed by the seller or buyer. These would be most likely attorneys, power of attorney. See this often in probate stuff. Where it's an estate sale. County recording office or other municipality recording or recorder where the property resides. Most of the time, at least in our area where I live, it's the county, and I believe that's very common across the country, but I'm leaving it open in case somebody's watching this from somewhere in the Northeast and it's the city that records the sale or something like that.
Right.
But escrow and title, they coordinate the recording of ownership transfer and a new lien, also known as the mortgage, right?
Right.
To get those all recorded with the county or municipality.
Right. Yep.
All right. Now, who actually is escrow in a real estate transaction?
Yeah.
We talk a lot about escrow this, escrow that, but who is it? Escrow is actually a company that has its own offices and employees. The person who closes the transaction is called an escrow officer, and they are licensed to do so. Okay, this is a licensed professional.
Yep.
No other employees of the escrow company are allowed to close the transaction. It has to be the escrow officer. And they are also generally public notaries, as your signatures do need to be notarized.
Right.
In general, an escrow company will have the word escrow in their name.
Yep.
Whatever escrow company. But most title companies also have escrow divisions. And in most cases, not all, but in most cases, the title company providing the title insurance will also be providing the escrow services to close it. However, this is not required. It can be two totally different entities.
Yep.
But that's usually what we see. But in addition, there are some attorney offices that provide escrow services for closing real estate transactions as well.
Right.
So
Right. That's super common in other states, I know. So again, other people in states, sometimes closing can happen through attorneys.
Yeah.
And Washington State,
Washington State, it's not necessary and not as common, although I've been in many transactions where that's happened. So
good.
It's fine. Now, one thing that sometimes comes up is what if I live too far away from the escrow company, or I'm traveling at the time it's going to be closing, or if I'm not mobile and cannot make it into the actual escrow office.
Right.
We see this a lot, all the time, actually. Any one of those scenarios. Some people are old and they can't leave their bed, or they can't leave their home. A lot of people are traveling, or perhaps you're buying a home, you're living in another state. You're buying the home in this state and you haven't come here yet.
Right.
So anyway, most escrow companies, they provide a mobile or courtesy signing where they send a public notary to you wherever you are. And this can actually be done anywhere in the world, really, within reason. I mean, if you're deep in the jungle, in South America, or, far off in the desert on a trip, you're probably not going to get somebody to come meet you in those remote areas. Or, you happen to be working in the Arctic Circle or something like that, that's probably not going to happen. But with that said, you should be upfront and in contact with the escrow officer about what's going on with you as soon as you know where you're going to be around closing time. If you're not going to be in town, you need to let the escrow team know. If they don't know, this could be really costly for you in causing delays
Right.
getting your signed documents back in time for the required closing date.
Yep.
Or lock in your interest rate if you're the buyer. And getting a new mortgage.
It's good.
We've talked about this briefly, but your interest rate, generally interest rates fluctuate every day and sometimes during the day. And so when you're getting a new mortgage, you have to lock in the rate, and you can only lock it for a specific time, 30 days, 60 days, 45 days, whatever it is. So usually the loan officer, they're going to lock it with plenty of time to meet your closing date. But if there's a need for an extension, or if it's really tight, and it turns out that you're 3 states away and you didn't tell anybody that you were going to be out of town or something, all of a sudden you have to have a courtesy signing, somebody come to you to sign, and it has to be then FedExed or overnighted back to the escrow company, and that might take a day or two.
Right.
Well, if that day is a day too late for closing, or your lock, that could be costly to you.
Super costly, yeah.
So anyway, never assume that the escrow team knows where you are or where you're going to be. Make sure and make it known, make it clear. Tell them more than once. Every time you talk to them, remind them, by the way, I'm still living in Montana, or I've got a business trip in Florida that week.
Specifically, Mark, to the traveling thing, because that's where it could get probably cross-haired or whatever. When do people sign at escrow in relation to the closing date? Is there typically like a X amount of days before closing?
Well, for the buyer, it could be actually the day of closing. We see that sometimes. Usually it's the day before for a buyer. The seller usually signs anytime during the week of closing. So if the closing is on a Friday, the seller might sign the previous Friday or that Monday or.
Good. I just wanted people to know, like, it's not like for 30 days during the whole transaction, you have to let escrow know where you are, but know that like in the last week or the couple days before closing, like if you're going to be out of town or you're not going to be able to, like, that's the window that you're letting escrow know.
No, I'm glad you brought that up. Because it's generally speaking, well, as a buyer, you cannot sign actually until the lender has everything finalized, your final approval, and they've written up the loan documents and sent those loan documents to escrow.
Right.
Usually that happens, within the last 3 days before closing.
Yeah. Right.
Usually, sometimes they have them done a lot earlier than that, but that's usually when that happens.
Nice.
So, but again, never assume though that that's what's going to happen. So just never assume anything in this regard. Just be in good contact and clear contact with the escrow company about where you're going to be during the transaction period.
Right.
So if you're not sure, well, I'm going to be, we're closing December 15th, and I'm going to be on a trip from the 5th to the 10th. Still let them know that, just in case, something does happen and everything's going to go sooner or something like that. Just let them know, and they can tell you, oh yeah, we don't need to worry about that. Or they'll say, oh, great. Well, we're going to need to send somebody out to you.
Yeah, totally. And be in communication, because then if you're going to go somewhere like the Arctic Circle, right, then you would want to tell them that. So they'd be like, oh, actually, well, we can't get you in to sign at that time. We'll have to make other arrangements. So you just want to have that flexibility. So, good. Cool. What else?
In this regard, do I need to review, this is the next question, do I need to review and respond to all the emails that I receive from escrow lenders?
That's good.
Yes, you do. To avoid delays of your closing, be sure to respond to your lender and your escrow officer's requests immediately. If there is a delay from either buyer or seller, that could put you at risk for going outside the contract terms. So,
yes.
Now, related to this, and very important, we talked about this briefly in the last episode about fraud. Fraud does exist out there. There are criminals out there trying to get our money. I have to be wary of it as a real estate broker as well.
Right.
In a transaction. Always call before you wire. This is what title and escrow companies are constantly telling us. Make sure your clients know they need to call before they wire any funds to us, because there are criminals out there that might be aware that you're about to close a real estate transaction. They may even find out when that's going to be, and they will, in very tricky ways, email you changes in wiring instructions or something like that. Just so you know, escrow company will never send you a change in wiring instructions.
Wow.
They will always call you with wiring instructions and then send you them in writing via email.
Right.
So just to be safe, always call the escrow company before you wire your funds to them. Never rely solely on email communications, even if it looks exactly like what you were expecting from the escrow office employee.
Yeah.
Always call before you wire.
Yeah, it's good.
Okay.
Yep, so important. I love that.
Yeah.
Good.
So I mean, there's a lot more to escrow than what we've covered, but I think these are the main things. So
I think,
yeah.
I was just gonna say, like, if those of you listening to this go back through all the episodes so far, I think like you get a real good, almost a masterclass, I think, in like the transaction. And this is really important because people often don't understand what goes into this. And I think you've done a really intelligent job, Mark, of laying out what happens. And so I think it's a good, one of the things you said in the past, which I love, is like, it's important that you have an agent that knows the details. There's a lot of agents, surprisingly, that don't know the details because the barrier to entry to get your real estate license is not that high. So those of you listening, Mark, I'm putting this into the conversation for you, that you guys listening to this want an agent who knows what they're talking about and understands the details, because it's a contractual thing. And that's what Mark does and knows. So
yeah, well, thank you. I'd like to think that.
Yeah.
Right. But it's also, it makes it a lot easier for me when I'm working with another agent that is also knows the details.
Yep, absolutely.
So
yeah, it's good.
Where you don't have to explain things that they should just know, or have them not do something they should have done.
Right, exactly.
Not paying attention. Anyway, yeah.
It's really good.
Makes it easier for all of us.
For everybody. Yeah. I mean, so if people want to reach out to you and ask you questions about buying or selling a home and benefit from your detail orientation on this process, how do they reach you?
Yep. Just email me at soundfamilydwelling@gmail.com, or my other email address is seattlehomes2010@gmail.com.
Perfect.
So yeah, email me anytime.
Great, Mark. I love it.
Okay.
Thanks for always passing on your wisdom, and I look forward to seeing you next time.
Yeah, next time. Thanks, Chris.
Bye.